Right, so now I would like to ask you something about how I understand limit and you understand limit. Maybe we'll get on the same page. If this pizza was unlimited, would it fit in this lecture theatre?
No.
Because that would be a limit. Would it fit on the planet?
No.
Would the sun exist if this pizza was unlimited?
No.
Shall I tell you why? Because the sun, by existing where it is, prevents the pizza from getting there. Therefore, if the sun exists, it's a limitation on the pizza, can't be done. If the pizza was truly unlimited, there'd be no sun. Would this pizza be able to think? Could it read your mind? Could it sing? If you say no, then it's limited. An unlimited pizza, is it going to fit in the universe? No. Would anything else be in the universe if it was unlimited? No. Would it still be a pizza? No, because then you've limited it. The very idea that one thing in this universe will be unlimited destroys everything else in the universe. Nothing in this universe is unlimited. Everything in this universe is limited, is finite, is dependent, was caused, is created, and creation equals creating.
Can I come back to that?
No, I think the professor has the response. And
can I just respond to your point, actually, because I think it's a very good point. And what you're, I'm not a mathematician at all, so tell me if I get this totally wrong. But what your analogy with pi seemed to illustrate, as if I understood it properly, was that concepts which seem irrational when looked at in a certain kind of way are nevertheless perfectly serviceable for making sense of things when we use them in the right sort of way. The concept of pi is irrational in the sense that it involves an infinite numerical sequence, which therefore by definition we can never complete. Hassan referred to it as therefore not an actual irrational, but a possible irrational. But it's an actual irrational number.
I did not
because it is. Okay, sorry, I missed that.
I said possible infinite, actual infinite is different.
Okay, and you want to say it's a possible infinite, not an actual infinite.
That's how mathematicians describe it.
But it's an actual infinite because it is the ratio between the circumference and the radius of a circle. Right?
Can you show me pi?
So it's an actual infinite in that sense. Once we start, when we try to think of the notion of completing that infinite series, if it is indeed infinite, of course we get into difficulties. Nevertheless, if we use that mathematical concept in the right sort of way, it's perfectly serviceable. Likewise, our concepts of space and time are perfectly serviceable for describing everyday reality. Indeed, we could not think about everyday reality, the reality of our experience, without concepts of space and time. Once you start pressing the notion of space and time to ask whether it's finite or infinite, of course you get into difficulties, and whatever you say starts to look irrational. Nevertheless, just like the concept of pi, it's perfectly serviceable if you use it in the right sort of way. So I think it's a nice analogy. Tell me if I've misunderstood it.
Okay, very quick comment there.
I'd just like to say, Hassan, I did specifically ask, the concept of time, whether time is infinite specifically, and then you took this image of a pizza, which
then let me respond. I apologise. I didn't realise.
And so, I appreciate that there's no way I could make pizza, infinite. But how many pizzas can you fit in a minute? That equally doesn't that doesn't equate. You're trying to put pizza into this.
I think you understand the question. I think you'll answer the question.
I completely agree. I apologise. I didn't realise it was a time infinity part. And my point was about things in the reality being finite. Time, I believe I've already addressed it a few times. I said you can't be at the end of an infinite series of events because that means infinity's ended. That's why I say that there's no infinity when it comes to time, and I believe I've made that point repeatedly.
I don't think you've fully justified it though, because
can you be at the end of an endless series? Can an endless series end?
Can you be? So it won't be endless. We talked about.
Can you be at the end of something endless? Does that make sense? Is that rational?
No, it's not. But you could be in the middle, perhaps.
I drop the pens.
We talked about discussing irrational things, and you can have a rational discussion about irrational.
Actually, but I disagree with you. There's nothing irrational about a possible infinite. It's an idea used to help mathematicians. You're the one that's raised the fact that it's irrational. I haven't. I'm telling you that there's no actual infinite, and that's irrational. But the possible infinite isn't. understanding life using something that is a possible infinite, no problems. People do it all the time. That's why there's a symbol, a notation for infinity.
But you're the one.
I think we're going to take the next. No, I think we're going to take the next question. I think it's given. We're spending too much time on this topic. The brother over here had a question here.
Okay, I think it's still an interesting discussion to further explore the issue of the infinite. Perhaps that can be addressed in somehow, which I'm going to ask as well. About the multiverse theory. From my understanding, the idea of the multiverse is a way that scientists are approached giving a final explanation of why the basic fundamental forces are as they are in the universe. Because of the fact that all the laws that we observe, they come back to certain fundamental forces, 4 or 6 fundamental forces, and these are what determine why the world is as fine-tuned as you pointed out before.
Yeah.
And this idea as a multiverse is that there's lots of different options for why these laws have emerged. However, the question I would ask is that, doesn't the fact that the universe is rational, that it's ordered by laws, indicate there must be something that has placed these laws in place in the first place? Even the multiverse theory or the multiverse argument calls for some sort of basic system that gives rise to a multiple number of universes and the conditions that they need in order to emerge. So since the universe, everything we observe in the universe as well, are all constrained by fundamental, rationally ordered laws, doesn't that indicate that there's something that placed those laws, which is not from the universe, not bound by those laws, but actually legislates them?
I mean, the basic question here, which we're struggling with, isn't it, is where do explanations come to a stop? Now, clearly for a lot of people, a lot of people have the feeling that wherever you bring the scientific explanations to a stop, whether it's the Big Bang or M theory or whatever, something else is needed. And I guess that's the basic point at which we divide. Right? I mean, I want to say explanations have to come to a stop at some point. You can only explain one thing in terms of something else. So in the end, you're going to have to settle for something which is the point at which your explanations come to a stop. And I guess the basic divide between us is between those of us who want to say, yeah, and that ultimate explanation would just have to be some kind of scientific claim, which is an assertion that that's just how things are. Those who want to say, no, that's somehow unsatisfying, and we haven't really explained it unless we've appealed to some notion of purpose or design or creation or something like that. Now I can see that that further move could be emotionally satisfying, but I don't find any rational cogency in the need to move to it. It doesn't get us off the hook that explanations have to come to an end at some point. The difference between myself and Hassan, I think, basically is he's happy for explanation. He wants explanations to come to an end at the point where we posit a creator. I am happy for explanations to come to an end at the point where scientific explanations hit bedrock. And I guess that's the fundamental sort of difference in approach between us in this debate.
I went through the rational basis, and I gave you something to think about when you have this, shall we say, approach, and then you see something that had a beginning, didn't make itself. Your rational approach tells you that there was a cause. Richard is saying that he's not going to use the rational approach that I've presented, and instead he'll wait for science to come up with an answer one day, hopefully, maybe. That's why I'm going to ask all of you to make a decision. If you understood the rational approach that I gave you, and you use it, and you come to the conclusion that there's clearly a beginning, it didn't make itself, what conclusion do you come to? You come to the conclusion there was a cause, there was a creation, there was a creator, and then would you hold on the rational view, hold back and think, well, maybe science will give me a better answer? Or will you just stay rational? Will you stay rational?
Our next question will be taken by guy with the brown jacket.
Okay, Professor Norman, just a few points I want to clarify, just to make sure I don't pose an incorrect question. So you said that you're happy to go as far back as science.
Yes.
Okay, well science can't go back past Planck's constant, which is after creation. So you're actually here debating whether creation is rational when you admit that you don't even consider any explanations that don't even reach creation. So is that not quite
Planck's
insincere
constant
of
will
you?
be one of the physical constants that are appealed to in the fine-tuning argument, and there are others, as I said, like the force of gravity.
Right, but the point is that you said that you're not willing to go back further than science. But science can't go back further than Planck's constant, which is negligibly,
yes.
but after creation.
Yes.
So my first question is it not quite insincere of you to be discussing this concept and then turn around and say, you know what, I'm not even going to go back to that point, I'm going to stop 10 feet ahead of it?
No, I'm willing to stop at the point where we come down to certain fundamental physical features of the universe.
Okay, but not creation.
Are as they are.
Just to be clear, you're not willing to go back to the point of creation.
Well, I'm willing
to,
to, but I simply don't think that it explains anything. If there are
that's a
things that we
meaningless
can't
comment.
further explain, that's not a good enough reason for saying, therefore, let's not do something else, because we must have something. We've got to accept that at some point explanations come to an end. Now, if you're happy with an explanation that comes to an end with the existence of a divine creator, you're in no better position than I am. Right? Again, you're just appealing to the existence of a brute fact.
No, but what I'm saying is, in terms of this discussion,
that to you. But those who do say that's the point at which I'm willing to stop the existence of a divine creator, which just is. It just is the fact that that being exists.
Okay, but I just wanted to be clear that you're not actually willing to go to the point of creation. But my second question is, I actually want to determine whether you're actually rational or not, because following on from the gentleman's question, that some things don't really make sense, but in the end, they make sense.
Yes. Okay.
So, are you willing to accept that I've got an unlimited pizza in my pocket? Because it doesn't make sense, does it? Exactly. The question doesn't make sense.
No. This was the question of the point, wasn't it? That it makes no sense to talk about infinite entities within the physical universe.
Okay, are you willing to accept that I've got a 10-foot pizza in my pocket?
No.
Why?
Because your pocket is less than 10 feet long.
How do you know?
Because I can see you.
How do you know it doesn't go under this chair?
You are not 10 feet tall, and you can't possibly have a pocket that's 10 feet long.
But how do you know it doesn't go under this? You can't see under this chair.
Yes, I can.
No, you can't. You can't. You can't. Does it come down to lying?
I
think. Just to say my point is that I think it's quite. Just like Hassan keeps saying, is that you seem to take one method of thinking to certain things, but when it comes to the real question, automatically you impose a different style of thinking.
I guess my style of thinking, this is why I did genuinely say I agreed very much with the first half of Hassan's talk, because my mode of thinking is very much the mode of thinking that he described there. A mode of thinking that's based on our sensory experience, on the belief in a reality that's the world of our sensory experience, and our capacity to make sense of that world of our sensory experience in terms of the information we have about it. What worries me is the then attempt to step outside that mode of thinking, whereas I'm very happy to stay within that mode of thinking.
Question from right at the back. You had your hand up for a very long time. You still want to ask a question?
Yeah, I guess it's more of like a kind of criticism, just maybe another way to think about things. For Hassan, I like the analogies you gave, and I followed your logic. But something that I think we should be wary of is applying logic from an everyday experience, which, say for example, a pen dropping or the other examples you gave, to a period or something where we have no proper direct experience of, for example, like talking about the beginning of the universe, where we're not able to really comprehend the conditions of the universe. And if we're talking about time and gravity, I mean, as the gentleman over there mentioned about M theory, that's when gravity wouldn't have existed if the main forces all combined into one, but then the time as well. I don't think it's or taking, for example, applying, say, a rational way of thinking to something like quantum mechanics, it doesn't add up. So just because something may be rational, it sounds absurd, but it might not be rational to apply rational thinking in certain situations. I know that is quite an absurd thing to say. Like, it may be irrational